Can you
So
hear me?
welcome everyone. I know we're waiting for everyone to get signed in, and as soon as everyone gets signed in, we'll definitely have Chuck Homan do a little update on PPEs. I know everyone's probably super excited about hearing about PPEs, and I want to welcome everyone to our program today. We're super excited to have you on. I promise you, you won't be disappointed. We have some really good speakers today that are going to be giving you some amazing tips on restarting your practice. So let me see what our count is, Chuck. I think it's still going up. So why don't we wait just a few more minutes, Chuck, and I'll let you give like a little update on our PPEs, because I know that a lot of people are wondering about how that's going and what we're doing in the U.S. to make sure that we are ready to go, especially with a lot of our practices being open. I saw today that 32 practices are actually opened up today for care, so I'm really excited about that. All right. So with that being said, Chuck, I would love for you to please give us an update on PPEs and how it's going and what your thoughts are.
Thank you, Kay. I'm just a 2-minute overview. I know everybody's most concerned about acquiring, receiving the PPE that they need to run the practice. It's been really tough out there. Our team has been working literally 24/7 in order to source reliable, trustworthy products from reliable, trustworthy sources. As you can imagine, there's a lot of counterfeit product out there. We have run down almost 100 different leads, individual leads with factories and people, and a lot of people say they can find stuff, but it really doesn't hold up because it might be counterfeit, or we're not quite sure of the source or the factory or the FDA approvals. So we are working hard. We do believe the supply chain is ramping up. At this point, we are getting in some KN95 masks. We have not yet been released by the federal government to sell N95 masks into dentistry because they are, to this moment, reserved for frontline healthcare workers. That said, whatever you're doing for PPE in your practice, make sure you're buying from a trustworthy source. There's a lot of counterfeit products out there. You do not want to be taking risks with products that are all about safety. Very important to make sure you are receiving what you order when you order it. Kay, thank you very much, and let's get on with the program.
Fantastic. So the first thing I want to do is I want to make sure that I go over the CEs. I know that a lot of people are wondering how that works. So I always want to make sure I give you the simple guidelines. So number one is that when you registered for this webinar, please make sure you used your legal name. And what I mean by that is that the name that's on your license, because when they turn your CEs in, you want to make sure that it says the correct name. So please make sure you use the name that's on your license. If you didn't, don't panic. We'll take care of you. I promise. So all you have to do is send me a little email to practicecoaching@benco.com. Just say, hey, Kay, my name was Bill, and I mean William, and I use Bill. We'll make sure we correct it for you with no problem. Also, you also need to make sure that you are registered on a device. So you need to make sure if two of you are watching it together and you're both needing CEs, you each need to log on your own device. It's really important to make sure of that. With the registration, if you use your cell phone, so if you log in by your cell phone and you log in to watch it, you're good to go. However, if you dial in on your phone and you're listening to the webinar, we won't be able to see that. So we definitely need to make sure that you send us in your name, the title of the course, and your cell phone number that you watched it on. We'll be able to cross-reference that and then give you your CEs. It's also very important that you stay on for the entire hour. We know exactly, we'll have a timestamp of when you came on and when you came off. So it's really important to make sure that you stay on for the entire hour in order to receive your CEs. CEs will take about 30 days to get to you, so don't panic. If you don't receive them after 30 days, please, again, just send us an email, and we'll be able to tell you this later. It's practicecoaching@benco.com, and we'll make sure we take excellent care of you with no problem. Also, I really want to encourage you, while you're listening to the webinar today, to please, ask questions. So below, you're going to see there is a Q&A. All you've got to do is type in your question and we will make sure we answer it. If for some reason we don't get to all of the Q&A, don't worry. The speakers are going to be happy to respond to the Q&A, and every single person on the webinar will get a copy of all the questions and answers by all the speakers. So I think I gave you all the instructions. Getting pretty good at that. So with that being said, I get the honor and privilege to introduce who you heard earlier come on and give us an update on PPEs. I can't say enough about his leadership and how lucky I am to be able to work with him. Chuck, you've done an amazing job, not only to take care of your Benco family, but to also take care of all of your Benco customers. I'm very honored to be able to introduce you. You come on every single webinar. I just have the biggest heart. Thank you so much, you and your family. So with all that being said, I would love to introduce the Managing Director for Benco Dental, Chuck Cohen.
Kay, thank you very much for the lovely introduction. It's now my honor to introduce one of my favorites, and that's Linda Anderson. I go back with Linda at least a decade, probably longer. She's one of the most talented practice coaches that I know of in all of North America. And I say that because she's a Canadian. And of course, as Americans, we love Canadians. So she's great. And she's going to be talking to us today about reopening your practice with great communication. One thing we do definitely know is that communication skills and how we communicate with our patients is very important to how we reopen our practices. So with that, Linda, thank you for sharing your ideas with us today, and thank you for getting dentistry back to business.
Well, thanks very much, Chuck. And I agree with Kay. It's been phenomenal that you've been here opening every single webinar, and it's very rewarding to work with Benco. My last work day was March 13th in Ohio. So who knew Friday the 13th would be the last work day? Anyways, now it's time to start to think about to reopen our practices. And we all are entering a new phase of uncertain times. And as I was sitting on the couch thinking about this yesterday, we're going through what we call the 4 stages of change. And at our launches, when we work with clients, we talk about the stages of change and what that entails. And the first stage is forming. And that's when we first get together. We're excited, we're not excited, we're anxious, all those kinds of feelings are happening. Then the second stage, okay, my screen's not advancing, guys.
Hold on 1 second and I'll make sure we have you. So just push the arrow button next
I am.
Okay. Sometimes it takes a second. Just give it 1 second because it's slow. So just
there, okay.
There you go. And don't worry, it happens, Linda. So just be patient.
Okay. All right. Anyways, so we're going to go into the second stage of change, which is called storming. And in the storming stage, that's when the learning curve happens. So there's going to be a lot of change. We've been through it. I've been through tons of change in my career. So we're going to go through that storming stage where we're learning to do new things. And so I'm really excited today to be able to share my passions with what I think we need to do. But first we have to do our disclaimer for today. And that is that the information and recommendations contained in this report represent Benco Dental's best thinking as of the date below. However, in a fast-changing environment, we urge practitioners to check with other professional advisors, such as your attorney, your accountant, regulators, etc., as you restart your practices. And that's of today, because as we know, things are changing daily. So the team approach to successful communication. So when I'm teaching about teams going through the storming stage in their practice, as we change things, I teach them that, and we talk about the importance of having team meetings. Team meetings is a way to help your team get through the storming change process faster. So what we need to do is to get the first team meeting, your reopening meeting scheduled. Now at this point, you may have a virtual meeting through Zoom, or you may be able to be in an area where you can have your meeting in person, practicing your social distancing, of course. But let's get that meeting scheduled. Your team meeting is going to require all the same roles that we would have when we're having our normal team meetings. A timekeeper, someone to make sure that everyone is doing their topic on time, they're controlling the meeting, making sure that it gets happening as we need to so that we don't go off into tangents, because that can happen. In fact, Kay, you probably agree, most people complain about team meetings because we get on tangents and we talk about the same thing all the time.
You're absolutely right, Linda. I think a lot of doctors are going to really have to work with, they becoming a better leader, because they sometimes go away from team meetings because they don't want the conversation, right?
That's right. So we also need someone to take action items. We are big on action items. Who's going to do what by when? Action items are based on SMART goals, so they must have a timeline. We're going to talk a little bit about that. And then, of course, you need a note taker, and your note taker is going to make sure that they're documenting everything that was talked about. It's going to go into a binder, and then that will be important for future use for your other team members who maybe didn't make the meeting, or so you can reference back to those notes at a future meeting. But definitely we need these three things to happen as part of your team member.
And Linda, we're a big believer that they should take turns doing those, right?
Yes,
They should.
yes.
Everybody needs an opportunity. So it's
Yep.
not just one person, because we get that one person who always wants to do them.
Right. The other thing I really recommend is to have a sign-up sheet before you start your meeting. It's important to have everyone to have a say. So I like teams to put up a sign-up sheet so that people that don't normally speak up in meetings can write an idea on that sign-up sheet, and it allows team members to better prepare for the meeting. They get better ideas that way. They can think about things so nothing is sprung on them. There's not a lot of surprises. So definitely have a sign-up sheet for team members to put things that they feel are important to talk about. And like Kay said, we want to put a sign-up sheet for future team members that are going to do it each month. So your timekeeper, your note taker, and the person that's going to lead the meeting. That way it's balanced participation among your team. Everyone's taking turns. It's a shared responsibility. I think that's really, really important.
I do too, 100%.
Yeah. Your team meetings need to be scheduled out for the entire year. Whether you have one a month or two, right now I would recommend two, because you're going to need to do follow-up meetings. Scheduling them out for the year allows everyone to know when they are. And I think that the importance and the benefit to this is, because I know you're going to want to release that hour to see a patient, but right now the benefits are going to be, you're going to have less interruptions. A dentist is interrupted more than 177 times a day. And at this point, when you're following the new routine, you're not going to be able to run to the back to ask them a question. It's not going to be as convenient. So you're going to need to be able to be prepared by having your meeting so you can answer those questions then. It will make sure your team members are all in the know. You want to make sure that everyone is on the same page. It will also cut down on gossip, believe it or not. If you have your team meetings, you're going to cut down on inter-office gossip. And you can now make sure that your protocols aren't falling in through the cracks, that everyone's consistently doing the same thing, because you're going to be always checking and following up on that.
Linda, I see you have it at 8 o'clock. So I guess why do you like it at 8 o'clock?
You want to have your team meetings when people are fresh. If 4 o'clock team meetings, guess what? Everybody wants to go home and everyone's tired, and they're not going to give you good ideas. They're just going to want to rush through it. So I think morning team meetings are the best, and lunch isn't always ideal either. A lot of people like to do it at lunch, but you're running late sometimes. People want to eat their lunch again, and they're rushing through not great ideas. So morning is best.
Thank you.
So an agenda that I would recommend for your opening team meeting was, number one, let's check in with the team. How are they doing? What have they been doing? How have they been feeling while they've been home, working from home, or teaching their children from home, or all these kinds of things. They're going to have fears and things that are going on in their minds, and questions and things that they'd like to share with you. The next point you want to talk about is your planned opening date. Now, some of you may already be open, but people that aren't open, you need to plan what day you're actually going to do it. So you have to have a timeline for that. Also, what team members will we need? Are we going to bring back the whole team at once? Will we have a staggered start? Will only certain people come back on the first day? But definitely you need to have timelines for your team members. And we're going to talk more about this, but the hours needed to accommodate the patients you have on your schedule. We need to plan for how many hours you're going to need to work going forward for the rest of the year. And you may have to add some hours, Fridays or Saturday morning or end of the day, add an extra hour. I know everybody's going to shoot me. They're going to say, no, Lena, no. But we're going to need to think about that, guys. What's your social media plan? If you've cut back on social media when you're off, that was probably not the best thing to do. We've got the majority of the population is on the internet right now, surfing things, and your practice needs to be right out there with the social media and promoting. I've seen some great little like TikToks and TED Talks and opening videos and things that practices that I work with have been doing on Facebook, and they're fantastic. They're great. Everyone should consider doing something like that. You want to review and discuss the new PPE needed. Who's going to wear what? What do we have on stock? What's our inventory? And you might want to practice putting it on and taking it off. What's it going to feel like? Remember, when we're going through those stages of change, that new normal is not going to feel new and it's not going to feel normal. It's going to feel horrible. We're not going to like it. So role playing and practicing something like that is key. Now, the next point on your agenda should be, what are the new protocols for our admin team? This is going to be a big change, and Donna and Dr. Gantner are going to talk later about the clinical team, but for the admin team, like, I don't know about you, Kay, but I've never taken someone's temperature.
Oh, only my kids.
Only, yeah, a long time ago. They're all grown up. So
Exactly.
taking temperatures is going to be different for us. Everything we want to try to avoid with pens and paper at the desk, doing more things virtually, well, like online medical forms, all those things. If we don't know how to do those things already, we're going to have to learn, and we need to be hit the ground running. We don't want to be learning on our first day. So what are the new protocols for our admin team? The next thing is fees and financial concerns. This is going to be a big one because your patients are out of work, they don't have money, your team's worried about them, you're worried about your overhead and your costs. Fees have gone up, prices have gone up for everything, and you need to get money in the door. So really sit with your team and address those fees and financial concerns. What is your financial policy going to be? What are you going to ask patients to do? This is a great time to talk about in-house plans, Kay. I think that I've been promoting it for a long time now, but call Greg Beck, our Banco partner in dental practice services, and think about getting an in-house plan for your patients.
Yeah, and you know what we'll do? We'll actually do a flyer for him that he sent us. So if you don't have an in-office plan right now, or if you need some help reviewing your fees right now, because you know fees, it's a great time right now to really review your fees. Check with your TR, your territory rep for Benco, and we will be able to get you a disc that will give you the fees for your zip code. Yep. So it's really a good time to make sure that you slow down and look at that. And that's a great thing to do at a team meeting, right, Linda?
Yeah, absolutely. You've got to, don't be shy about talking about money. It can be one of the biggest challenges you have dealing with patients on that. The next thing you want to talk about is, I like to get the team together and create lists of what they think patients are going to ask. Oftentimes their fears about patients' questions are not really what happens in real life, but they have fears. So if you develop a list, okay, this is what we think patients are going to ask us, then you can practice at your team meeting what your great answers will be. And role play it. I like to say, okay, when you're going to go to Broadway and be in a play, you don't just show up and be in the play. You've got to practice. So practice and role playing your patient questions will be something that's another thing you could talk about at a team meeting. Be prepared.
That way you're all responding the same way. I think it's
Absolutely.
really important that if I come in the door and they ask me a question and they go in the back, and you know they do that, right, Linda? They absolutely will ask the front desk one question, go in the back and ask them a different one. We want to make sure their response is the same.
Absolutely. You're going to need to create checklists for each position so that as you go through your day, did we check that off? Did we do this? Did we do this? Did we do this? Until things start to normalize and you're going to the norming stages of change, you're going to have checklists so that people know what they're doing and nothing's left behind. We don't want to forget to do something. Very important to get your checklist going, especially with your new duties that you'll be doing. And the last most important ones, we need revenue in the door. So let's set some goals. We need to block that schedule, keep your primary treatment. Primary, if you don't know what that means, that's your major, your big things that are high dollar treatments in your schedule. Plan for them every single day, because you do not want your first day back at work to be a bunch of little appointments that don't generate any revenue. So discuss that, how your schedule is going to look at your team meeting as well.
And I definitely agree with you, Linda. I think that we really need to improve in our treatment presentation skills, because I think that what you're going to want to see right now is you may even need to do 3 primary blocks per day, because you really want to get people to do more treatment per visit. and that's going to help the patient. And it really, it's a benefit for the patient. And so when you do your presentation, you need to make sure we go over it like that. Do you agree?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. The more dentistry per hour is, the better. Especially now when you're going to be in a room with your PPE. Hygiene assumption is something that I feel is a very important metric for a dental practice, whether we're in COVID times or not. Your hygiene is how many hours do we need to be open based on the number of active patients we have. Many practices make decisions on how many hours, how many treatment rooms, how many things without even really considering their active patient count. And an active patient count is someone who's been in your practice in an 18-month period of time. And we need to know that. It's important to know that so that we can make decisions on how many hours we need to be open. Now this is when I talk to you about the formula, it's going to give you a base amount of hours that you need. To build on top of that, we need to plan for hours for how many new patients. We need to plan hours for how many emergency patients we're going to have, and we need extra hours for periodontal patients. So the formula kind of works like this. You take your total patient base and say it's 1,000 for easy math, because I like easy. And you multiply that by 80% because we want to assume that at least 80% of our patients are going to come in to see us and to see the hygiene department as well. And say they come twice a year. So that's going to give us how many patients we're going to see in a year. So that's about 1,600 visits, patients. And then let's multiply that by a 40-minute appointment. So just for this sake, you can make a 50, you could do whatever you want here. But we're going to then say that that's about 64,000 minutes that we're going to need. And then you divide that by 60, and that gives us hours. So 1,000 patients is going to give us, and we divide that by 60, that's going to be 1,066 hours in a year. So I'm assuming with this formula that we're going to work 48 weeks out of the year. So out of those 48, we've already worked 10, January, February, March. If we've had 8 weeks off, then really we only have 30 weeks left to work for the rest of this year. So that would mean that we need to have 26 hygiene hours a week on 1,000 patients. Plus, like I said, new patients, perio, and emergencies and things like that. So it's a good idea just to sort of run through this math, go through your patient list, have your, go through your unscheduled list and see how many patients we have sitting there, because we need to figure out the hours that we want to accommodate them for the rest of the year. And that's where I say we might need to work an extra hour in the morning or at the end of the day or Saturday morning. Your meeting should always have an action item sheet, and there should be someone responsible for taking this, like I said, an accountable person to write the action item. So on your action item sheet, I want you to write the actual task. So what is going to be done so that it's very clear. We base our action item sheets on what we call SMART goals. And SMART goals are specific, they're measurable, they're achievable, they're realistic, and they have a timeline. No SMART goal ever had an ASAP. So we want to put the task that needs to be done, who's going to do it, and it's going to be done by what date. So March 1st is passed. Donna, did you get those medical history forms updated? Sorry, Donna. Okay. Then the action sheet is going to go to your communication board. The communication board, if you don't know what that is something that we recommend you set up in your team room. Someone should be responsible for that board to make sure it's daily updated, that the old things are taken down. Sometimes I go into practices and I'll see something from 2008 on a communication board. I'm like, okay, guys, really, let's update this. So get someone to do that. So someone should make sure that they're updating their board and checking it daily. And there should be something on this board that the dentist team is going to work on, that your administrative team has to work on, something for the hygienist, and something for the dental assistants. And so every day you should check your action sheets to see if there was something to be done that day. But what you want it to be written down, because like even in a chart, if it's not written down, it didn't happen. And if you have a good communication board, no one on your team should ever say they didn't know anything about that, because their job as a team member is to look at the communication board every day.
Yeah, you know what, Linda, and this also does help if you have people that work part-time, and maybe, you know, some of our offices actually will have a color code for their uniforms. And so you can actually put the color code up there. Or, you know, I know when we go in and we do coaching, you know, we want to make sure that the team is there. So you can have an event of like what's coming up that we need to make sure that everyone's on board. I mean,
Yep.
those are some of the things that I know that when I see our communication boards up in a practice, it's really good. And I also think that, Donna, having this communication board, Linda, having this communication board in a team room that's by an exit door where they go in and out of is also important.
Oh, absolutely. It has to be there so they can see it and look at it. I like there to be a section about FYIs, things that are happening today. Some offices, I think it's cute, they'll put words of the week or joke of the day or things like that too. But anything that inspires the team to read about what's going on in the office, I believe is super important. Every office I go to, the number one thing they say to me is, Linda, how can we communicate better? It's the number one thing they always want us to solve, communication. So the team meeting and a communication board are two of the systems that are super important for that.
You know, Lynn, and I will tell you on this communication board, I've actually seen it where they've actually put pinstripes on each of those sections. So if the admin team goes up and let's say I write something under the admin team, like maybe a prescription that I need to call in, if I write it down, if the doctor reads it, he just marks through it. Then I go back, I see the mark through, and then I'm the one who actually erases it. So it's really a good handoff for communication. And I've seen offices do that because I think people get so, you know, oh, well, I'll text this or text that, but did they complete it? You know, how do you know they saw it? So I think that's a really good way.
Yeah, it's having a whiteboard as part of the communication board is important too. Yeah, you're right, and they can wipe it off when it's done. So that, and that's a nice thing to check that every day to see if there was something due today. Team responsibilities. Everyone on the team should have responsibilities. This is also a good time to review job descriptions, add to the job descriptions that you have, update and create and check for new protocols that need to be added to your protocol books. It's because everyone's got new duties added on. There's new technologies to learn, whether it's taking the temperature in online forms, online payment plans, online consent forms, all these things, the new technologies that we need to learn. As I said, we want to hit the ground running. Also, guys, if you haven't gone chart free, if you're still waffling in between, good time to do it. Good time to go chart free and make that happen.
You know, and I'm going to say this, I don't think we have a choice anymore. You have to go chartless. So if you are not chartless, reach out to us. Let us help you. I mean, being chartless it's mandatory now. Paper is something that you don't want shuffled around your practice. So again, I hate to say it, but I know that there's a lot of people who go, oh, you know what, I'm just going to wait. I'm going to wait and I'll sell my practice and they can go chartless.
Yeah,
you don't need to do that anymore. Make sure you invest in the time and training and go chartless. You will not regret it.
Absolutely. And you know, we love Open Dental too, right, Kay? It's a really good software and we can help you with that and make it easy.
It's 100% easy. I think that if you're in it, most of the time that we see software, people are not utilizing their software. And again, I definitely will say this, when they do utilize it, if they're not utilizing it correctly because they haven't been taught, that's another thing that you have to really overcome. So please make sure that you are, you know, steady up, have a software that works with your office. I love Open Dental. And I think the thing about Open Dental is I like their customer service. I think they have great customer service. There's a lot of good systems out there. Just whatever system you're working on, you know, there's no reason why today you should have any charts. It takes we like to coach our offices 1 year from charts to going chartless. So the sooner you start, the better, but it's definitely not a choice anymore.
It's a time to fast track it if you've been off too. So some of the different things you might consider putting in people's checklists is your hand sanitation stations. Who's going to update those? Who's going to make sure they're full and that patients are using them? Prepare your administrative team area. Remove all the magazines and the toys and coffee bars and all those things that we used to have there. Are you going to give patients pens? Do you have office pens with your name on it and the patient can keep it if they're going to sign something with a pen, if they're not doing it virtually? What are you going to do about that? Who's going to take the thermometer? What's the plan? Who's going to do the patient's temperature? And your own team temperatures should be done every day as well, I believe. Have you got tissues throughout the practice for them to use? And is there going to be a letter for the patients? Now, the really very good source I found for this kind of thing is the ADA on the website. They've got all kinds of samples for patient letters and things on there as well. It's great. It's a great resource. They have it's called the Toolkit. Very good, well worth downloading if you don't have that. And what I've noticed, Kay, is some people have been putting things about their patient washroom. Some people haven't, so it's going to be interesting to see what happens, whether some of them have said no washrooms are going to be open, and some of them are saying they are. So maybe Donna and Dr. Gentner are going to speak about that, but I think it's you know, it's a silly question, but it's true. What do we do with that?
You know, I bet Melissa could probably answer that, because I think there comes a point where you have to supply someone the opportunity to go to the restroom if they need to go.
Yeah.
So I think I
Especially
can't
dental
imagine
patients, they all want to go before they start their treatment, right?
because they're laying down, correct?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
let me ask you, we have a couple of questions. So let me just
Sure.
ask you, this we always get this one. So it's the same thing. What if you have a part-time employee that only works in the afternoon? How do you get them to get updated about your team meeting?
Well, like I said, we've got the action sheets and we've got the notes. So anyone, if they missed your team meeting, should always go to the note board and read what they missed. I say that if you're a team member and you come in late, that's not a reason why you should not know the information. It's your accountability as a member of that team to go and find it on the communication board. That's why it's really important to have somewhere for the team to go to find out updates.
Yeah, and I know, especially if they hire someone who is a high school student and they come in after. But I would say it would be the office managers one-on-one to get them updated and go over any changes or job descriptions. So, you know, that is going to happen. We are going to have team members, but you know, your key team members need to be at all of your team meetings to make sure that then they're responsible for going back to whoever, like if that person was working in the back, maybe the lead person in the back would be able to catch up anybody who missed anything in the team meeting.
Absolutely.
Another note, and I want to go back to this one because this really does address what you said earlier. You know, they're saying, well, some of our patients don't want to come in because they don't, you know, because we're not going to be using the Cavitron or the piezo, and, you know, they're wanting to cancel their appointments. You know, I'm going to go and so I'm going to help you with this one a little bit, Linda. I'm just going to say this. You really and truly have to check your CDC guidelines. And this is another thing that Linda said earlier in the program. That's why it's important to actually write down these questions and talk it over and address how we're going to answer that to our patients.
Yes.
Do you agree?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. So those are the things that we have all been out in the public, and patients and people are my friends ask me, you know, so you know what patients are going to ask you about. So make sure you put that out there at your team meeting and discuss it so that you have some ideas. And if you don't know, say, well, you know what, let's work this out together. We'll figure this out. Letting them know that you're their advocate. It's very important to be the patient's advocate, especially in a time like this. So for sure, pre-plan it. The most you can do is you're always better off to be proactive.
Yeah, they were saying their patients were wanting to change their appointments, but you know, I would go back and I would really educate our patients about the importance of coming in. Hand scaling's been around for a long time. Again, it's still important to have the visit. It's still important to make sure that we do the complete, you know, oral exam. So I definitely wouldn't let your patients postpone it. I would educate them about the importance of coming and about the process that we used to do in the past is still going to be there, and they're still going to get good care.
Yep, absolutely. And the exam is important to prevent any further problems, right? Nip things in the bud while they're small, right?
Yeah, and then the other question is, like, you know, they're asking a little bit about time. So, you know, how we, you know, like time appointments for their hygiene used to be 40 minutes. You know, how are they going to look at that, and what are they going to do differently? What's your thoughts on that, Linda?
Well, I think that again, they have to figure that out. I've belonged to some dental forums on Facebook, and everyone's posting on there now about things like that as well. And I think that they have to discuss it with their hygienist and their doctor and plan what they're going to do during that appointment and how long it's going to take, and just plan their appointments accordingly.
And I'm going to go
That's
back.
That's going to be office specific.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to go back and say what you said earlier. This is going to be a really important time, because let's just say that you used to have a 40-minute appointment and now you're going to go to an hour. It's really going to be important to actually analyze your fees and look and see what you're going to be able to afford to do. And like Linda said, it goes back to looking at your active patient, you know, patient count, and what's a true active patient. You don't need, for one doctor, you don't need 24 2,400 patients, you only need about 15 to 17. So really and truly knowing what your active patient is, knowing what your fees are. And I would say really looking and truly at your PPO programs and which ones maybe you want to stay in and which ones you may have to end up getting out of because it's going to be a
Well,
negative.
this is going to be everyone's opportunity to look at their PPOs and figure out, really, is this serving us? For sure. It's going to be a big time up for that. I've already had phone calls.
100%.
Right? Yeah. So when your patients are coming back, the number one thing that they want to know about us is they can trust us, right? And was reading a survey that said right now 60 to 70% of patients still prefer the telephone for communication. So that tells me that they want to hear a voice. They want to hear the voice of someone that is going to make them feel good about coming in, and it's going to make them feel like they can trust us, that we're the patient's advocate. So I believe that trust is something that we need to talk about when we're talking about verbal skills, because other webinars like Catherine Eitel and other people have said, you know, no one really likes scripts, but I think that if we understand that what we're trying to do is build trust with our patients, that we don't need to use scripts. We can be our patient's advocate without them. So there's a great book. It's an old book, and I've referenced the 5 categories that patients usually have questions that they fall into. And it's called Tough Questions, Great Answers, and the author is Robin Wright. And it's still relevant today, even though I think it was written in the 90s. That, hello, yes, I've been around a while. And so anyways, you are the patient's advocate, and their questions usually fall into these categories. And it's an essential thing to get that trust. So the first category is competence. So competence means that they believe that you have the expertise, that you are giving, that you have good judgment. Then they're trusting that you're a good dentist or a hygienist, and that your treatment is quality. And so I believe that, you know, most of us can pretty much show that we're competent by our licenses around the office and our diplomas and things like that. But competence is an area that we work on in the trust category. The next one is commitment. Patients trust that you believe in your recommendations and that your worth. So how does that happen? So how do they know that? They know that when we say things like, if you were me, or if this was me, or if you were my mom, or you were my sister, they trust that you're committed to them, that you're their advocate. The next one is candor. And candor means that they trust that you're being straight with them and you're not leaving anything out. Confidence. Confidence is shown through eye contact, body language, how you speak to your patient. And this is one category right now that I think is going to be really hard, because why? We have masks and gowns and shields and all these things on that are going to make the verbal communication tough. So now nonverbal communication is going to be more important. So patients are impressed, or they get their first impression built on our behavior. So we need to speak with energy and emphasis. So meaning like, stand up, be energetic, talk with emphasis when we're explaining things to them. Make direct eye contact with your patients. If you're turning around and talking to the wall, or looking down at your notes, or writing in a chart note at the same time you're talking to the patient through a mask, there's going to be no communication there at all. Smile as you speak. They can still see it in your eyes. Have good posture. And I know I'm really bad for slumping, but we need to have a good posture. It helps with the projection of our tone and body language. And position your body towards your patient, not away from your patient. And be open, and maybe you can use arm gestures and things like that to explain, and use your hands a bit more to show confidence in your practice, in your dentist, in your fees. Everything that the patient's going to be worried about, you need to be confident when you ask them for the fee, when you tell them what the treatment is, when you tell them when the appointment time is. And the last one is cost fairness. And they need to be able to trust that you're charging a fee, the appropriate fee, for the services that you are offering, and that it is worth it, that the services you're offering are worth the fee you're charging. And I know it's a very sensitive and complex time for you to be asking patients for money, but again, we have to get revenue in the door, and the overhead and costs have gone up. So this is a big category of patient questions that we're going to have to be prepared to answer. Reactivation is what we're going to be doing. We're going to be reactivating people back into our practice. So let's get a priority list of patients that need to be seen. I highly recommend you go through and pick out even some patients that you know need treatment or were in the process of treatment before this all started, and they got canceled out of your schedule. Let's get them back in first. Get the perio patients back in. Contact them personally by telephone. Let them know they're going to be in good, you're going to be in good hands. Let them know that you care by asking them how they're doing. How's your family? We've been thinking about you. We're prepared for your return to our office. We want you to know that we're practicing all the guidelines from the CDC or your state, whatever you want to say, and that are being followed. And we can see you on Tuesday at 9 or Friday at 3. Yay! Never ask a patient when they want to come, especially now. Some of your patients are going to say, I'll call you. Okay, this, as when I was a hygiene coordinator, is the biggest nightmare, because what do? We put a note, don't call, we'll call us. Okay, I'm saying, guys, please don't do that. Say to them, certainly, that's great. I'll look forward to you calling. I'll make a note that you plan to go ahead with the treatment, but you need to check your calendar. I'm going to make a note here that I'm going to call you back in 1-2 weeks, make a deal with the patient when that'll be, get their number, and make a note and a follow-up date. Always, always, always have a follow-up date to follow that patient so you can get back in touch with them and call them and say, hey, you know, we talked about having me call you back on this date. Let's go ahead and schedule that appointment. Very important to have a follow-up date. Don't let them say, I'll call you back. I don't know about you, Kay. When you do assessments, you see all these notes. Don't call, don't call, don't call.
Yeah, not good, right?
Not good.
I think sometimes we let them off the hook too easy.
For sure. All patients need a follow-up date. Avoid surprises about your fees. Inform before you perform is my favorite line. Most people get upset, patients get upset about fees only because you do the treatment and then you tell them after. And they get upset about that. You would too. So let them know what it is. So you could say things like, our office policy is to ask patients to cover the cost of the dental service when it's provided. We want you to be comfortable with our fees. Our fees are based on our ability to provide the highest quality care with the best materials and careful adherence to infection control guidelines. But let them know what your financial policy is going to be, how much they're going to be paying before you start the treatment. This is, again, goes back to your team needs to know your financial policy so that they can answer these questions with confidence and show that what you're charging is fair. Questions about infection control. Well, in dentistry, as you know, infection control has always been our top priority, and our infection control protocol is followed so that when you receive care, it's both safe and comfortable. We take patient safety very seriously. We've not heard yet, touch wood, of any infections happening from a dental office. So this is going to be something that's going to be important to your patients to know, that it is our top priority. So in the past, we had a waiting room full of magazines and juice bars and coffee bars and water and all those neat things that made patients comfortable so they can come in and relax and not be nervous. Well, now we're going to put them in more sterile environment, maybe a virtual waiting room, maybe 2 or 3 chairs. They're not always going to be able to wait in the car, Kay, I don't think. So at some point, we're going to have something. The office is going to be more, we're going to be more worried about aerosol pathogens versus before it was all bloodborne. The team is going to be concerned about their own health now in the future, whereas in the past we were more concerned about the patient's health. And a patient would call and say they need to cancel because they have a cold. We used to say, oh, come in anyways. We've got masks and gloves, but we're not going to be able to do that anymore. So, we're going to be changing in the office and making sure that we are changing out of those clothes before we leave the office, and that we're following all the new PPE protocols, OSHA guidelines, things like that. And we used to cram pack the schedule. We put them in every little look-see, and we're not going to see that for a while. I don't know how that if that'll ever come back, that we can do that. So we're going to have it evenly spaced. We're going to have to run on time because we cannot have patients all backed up at the desk. So very important to think, okay, that was the past. This is what we're going to be moving towards. And it's going to be the new way of doing things. So success is not the position that makes the leader. It's the leader that makes the position. So it's you doing these roles that's going to make it successful, not that we have that position. So you can do it, guys. You can make this a successful. Just practice it. So what do we need to be successful? We need a morning meeting. And morning meeting, team meetings, communication boards are the top 3 systems we teach, usually on my first visits, to get this going out of the gate is your morning meeting. And this is your daily huddle, but is also now your opportunity to strategize your day. You're going to have to strategize your day at the morning meeting because you're not going to be able to run back and ask questions all day long. The benefits of a morning huddle are that you're being proactive, not reactive. You're going to think of things that might happen before they do, and that's always a better feeling. You're going to be able to hand off things to other team members, like who's doing what and at what time. And you will have increased revenue just because you're more proactive. You're doing things before things get out of hand or don't happen. The other benefit of your morning meeting would be that everyone knows their role on the team and what they're going to do. It's a communication update. Okay, what went well yesterday? What's going to go well today? Communication update. Is there an action item due today? You could talk about that. And it's a good opportunity to review the new protocols. You need to begin your day on time, and your morning meeting is part of that. So making this 20 minutes or units of time is part of your day. So you need to be there. If you're on time, it means you're late. So if you're taking your coat off, eating your breakfast, whatever you're doing, that's not your team meeting. That needs to be done before the team meeting. So when you're at the team meeting, you are totally engaged with that. It is a top priority. You, again, need a facilitator for your team meeting, someone to call it to action. Okay, guys, let's go. We're going to do this now. You need an agenda. What are we going to talk about at this? So we're not all over the map. And we're not talking about what we watched on TV last night or ate for dinner. And we need a timekeeper. Okay, we want to make sure we're seeing our first patient on time, so someone has to keep us on time on our morning meeting as well. You need to have your schedule there so you can review it, and you can review charts if you have to. If a question comes up, your schedule is there and you can click on the patient. You need to obviously have notes, pens and paper, and your timekeeper. Your morning huddle audit slips prepare a day ahead. You cannot come to your morning meeting if you don't prepare the day ahead. You need to review your patient's charts. You need to plan to be proactive for all your room setups and what you're going to need for each day, and make sure you have the right inventory. So out of your patient's charts, you're going to need to look for the personal information, something personal about them. What's today's treatment? Do they have any outstanding treatment or predeterminations that need to be followed up or that have been received? Any new medical information or past medical information? Any x-ray updates? Do they owe you money? What's their appointment history? Are they people that have they been coming? Were they here? When were they here last? Do they have a hygiene visit scheduled, or do they need to make one? And is there anyone else in their family that might be due for an appointment? You can use a code system, short form your outstanding treatment for TX, PDs, PD. That's all the dental jargon that you can use when you're planning your morning meeting. I like to write my team meeting stuff on, print a copy of the day sheet or the daily schedule, and you can use your code sheet and write it on under each patient's name if you need to. Before your huddle starts, of course, you need to check your phone messages. Make sure there was no changes overnight or messages left about emergencies, that you can take that information to the morning meeting. And you need to put your new huddle sign up on the front door to direct patients to your new protocol, whatever that may be, so that they know what to do when they arrive at your office. And if you're in the middle of your morning meeting, they know they need to text you, go back to the car, or whatever they need to do, whatever your protocol is going to be. Your huddle agenda should be things like what went great yesterday. Talk about, this is where you can talk about, okay, we tried that new thing yesterday. How did it go? Or how was that patient yesterday? What was the result? Did they have a great experience? Something about the restorative schedule. Are there lab cases that need to be back? Not sure what you're doing about lab people coming through your office, things like that. Those things also need to be talked about. Your hygiene schedule, you need to review that. New patients, if there is a new patient coming in today, something about it. Someone on your admin team should review that with the team, where they came from, who they were referred by, things like that. Is there any outstanding treatment, dentistry in the patients that are coming in today that still need to be scheduled? Your next opening. So I love to tell the doctor and the hygienist when their next openings are, when their next major blocks are, when their primary treatment, so that they can say to the patient, hey, Linda, we could do this for you next week if you'd like to get this started. Any relationship information at somebody's birthday, anniversary. And are we going to ask for referrals? Who should we ask for referrals from today? There could be a dentist or a dental assistant hygiene review. Is there any emergency time today? Not sure how that's going to work in this new world where we're going to put our emergencies. We should probably pre-plan a block time for them so we have designated time for emergencies. Are there any patients coming in today that have financial concerns? FYIs. FYIs are important for team communication. Sometimes you'll say, hey, we didn't know that Susie had to leave early for a doctor's appointment. So FYIs, the doctor's expecting a call. Susie has to leave early for a doctor's appointment. Things like that might be going to happen to the day just to keep the team informed. Any family members that we need to talk about? Who are we, again, referrals, post-op calls from yesterday. Did we make some? How did they go? And a positive thought for the day or a joke for the day. Something that motivates us to leave this meeting in a yes, let's do it mode. Okay, Kay, your face is sitting in front of my thing. You may never have that perfect day, but having a goal, having SMART goals will get you in that direction in which you need to go and focus. So do one thing at a time, perfect it, move on to the next, and you will have great days in dentistry. It's still a fun place to go. Love it every day. Miss you guys so much, and I really appreciate that you all being on my webinar today. Thank you so much.
So Linda, let's go over a few questions. So
Sure.
Number one, so I know you talked about scripts. I just want to say this. One of the things that we teach sometimes that having a script and having to read it can mess up a team member, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
anything that you want to do, go ahead.
Yeah, scripts are difficult because the script is never going to answer the question how that patient gives it to you. So you're going to get a question from a patient that you maybe have a relationship with, someone that you don't have a relationship, someone's a plumber, someone's a ballerina, so whatever. So you need to just, as long as your intent is there, you can, and you're using your modes of trust, and you answer them, let's work this out together. We're going to do this together. You don't need to follow a script. I just think as long as your intent is there, you will have success. Talk like you're talking to your friends.
Yeah, and I'm with you. I definitely think that bullet points are really good to say, I need to make sure I
Yes.
accomplish these things before I hang up the phone or before I do them. But I definitely think we want it to come from the heart. So
Right.
more than anything, you know, you can tell when something's being read. I don't want that. I want you to sound genuine.
Genuine. Now, yes, you can have a checklist or a new patient form or an emergency form that you can use for asking your patients questions when they call. I highly recommend that, actually. Then you don't leave out data. But like, again, practice what you're going to say in certain situations with your patients.
And so, yeah, someone's asking, can we still do teledentistry consultations during this time. I would say that the answer to that is teledentistry, as long as it's allowed in your state. Like Texas is not, teledentistry is not allowed in Texas, so we can't do it.
Mhm.
However, telemedicine is. So definitely, if your state allows it, I would say that's perfectly fine.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's fantastic. We'll probably see more of that in the future.
Yeah, and then let me ask you this, Linda. If we have a large team, sometimes do you ever believe in like doing before your team meeting, doing little small huddles with just your
Yes, that's a good point, Kate. If you do have a large team, sometimes a team meeting can get bogged down with topics that maybe not everyone is interested in. So I do promote the hygiene department have a meeting, the dental assistants have a meeting, the admin team have their own meetings, and if there's multiple doctors, they could definitely have a meeting as well. And then if you do those as separate meetings, that's awesome, but you could also do it for the first half of your full team meeting, everyone break in their divisions, discuss things that are important to those divisions, and then come back to your full team and share the outcomes of those. I think that is something that you really want to do if you have a practice with multiple team members, for sure.
And so as far as is there any of the handouts today that you can give that would possibly help any of the offices that we talked about today?
Absolutely. If you just want to email Benco, practice coaching at Benco, we're happy to send you anything you need. And even I'm happy to have a phone call. I've been sitting in my basement for 2.5 months.
I was getting ready to say that. So
Call me.
Yeah, call
I'm
her.
lonely.
She's lonely. So if you need some help going over some of the things that we talked about today, please give us a call. I want to say one more thing, because while they're switching over the slides, the biggest thing right now is your fee schedules. So when we balance fee schedules, what we see a lot of times is that like certain fees are like super high and certain fees are super low. We have a formula that will help you out, and we're happy to provide that with you. It's very reasonable as far as cost, but you definitely, now is an important time to make sure that you are, know what your overhead is, know what you need to charge, and make sure that it's fair and good for the patients. But you've also got to make sure you take care of yourself, right, Linda?
Absolutely. Your fees have got to be fair to you and your patient. I get that, but you also have expenses, and it's going to get more expensive. So let's make sure that you're taking care of yourself, for sure.
100%. So I think with that being said, and then one other question, when they do scheduling and they talk about scheduling blocks, a lot of times what we were doing prior, we're going to probably have to add some time on that. So that would be another meeting, right, Linda?
Absolutely. Like, if you may not get that big agenda done in one meeting, you may have to have multiple ones. Try it out a little bit and then come back and meet again and retry it until you get it the right formula that you want. But break your day up into the 3 types of dentistry: your primary, your which is your big stuff, your secondary, which are little fillings and things, and the emergencies and simple restorations. And then you still got your free things, your suture removals and things you don't charge for. So you definitely don't want a day full of that.
Yeah, and I think the majority of our phone calls that we're getting right now are people really want some coaching on how to get off of some of the PPOs, because they realize now that when they come back to work, it may not be feasible. So please give us what we can do is send us an email to practicecoaching@benco.com, and or go to your territory rep for Benco and let them know that you would like to do an hour consultation call with Linda or myself, and we'll definitely make sure we help coach you through it. Another thing too is that we're going to have a workshop with Catherine Itel to go over a lot of the telephone scripting. So I would definitely, we'll be putting that at the end, but I know Linda talked a lot about telephone scripting, and I think that Catherine does a really good job on that too, don't you, Linda?
Yeah. Oh, Catherine's amazing. I love her. Mm-hmm.
So let us know if you want more information about that workshop. So we really recommend that. And she's actually going to be passing out a lot of scripts. So I think that's going to be really good for us to actually use too. Linda, you did an amazing job. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. I loved it.
So with that being said, I'd like to introduce our next 2 speakers. I'll wait for Dr. Gantner to come on. So Dr. Gantner, you can go ahead and turn your camera on. So while she's getting her camera turned on, Donna, there she comes. So go ahead and turn your camera back on, Dr. Gantner, so we can see you.
It tells me that the host shut off the camera, so that I need them to turn it back on.
Okay, so Leah, are you on? Donna, are you hosting, or is Leah?
I can turn her on now.
Perfect. Thank you. Let's just make sure she gets on.
Nope, Leah asked.
So I'm clicking, it says I'm asking Dr. Gittner to share her video. Is she getting anything? Are you seeing anything pop up on your end, Dr. Gittner? Because I'm hitting ask to start video.
Okay. There it is.
There you
Well,
go.
look, you appear like magic. What can I say? Leah has the power.
Love technology.
Well, thank you. Thanks, Leah. We appreciate that help. So with that being said, I want to move right on because they have a really good presentation that I'm sure a lot of people are going to want to hear, and they're going to give us out a lot of good information. So Donna has been on our coaching team now for over 2 years. She's an amazing speaker. I can't tell you enough. She's taught me a lot. I love working with Donna. She's got a big heart and she loves what she does, and it's going to show today when you see her present. So Donna, thank you very much for the time and effort that you put into this. And then Dr. Gittner, you know, you've been around the coaching program now for over 19 years. I think we started out years ago when you had an office with only 2 operatories, and now you have an office with how many operatories?
10.
10 operatories. So you went from 2 to 10. So I'm super proud of that. So we really appreciate you both being here. And so with that being said, I'll let you go ahead and start. Thank you very much.
Thank you so
you.
much. And just like as Linda had said earlier, the information you're receiving is as of today. So any types of information, you know, as you know, everything that we're receiving is changing on a fast-paced basis. So stay tuned for those changes. And of course, we are working on a clinical part of what we're presenting. And if there are, you know, just always use your clinical judgment when it comes to making decisions. We're going to be providing what we know as of date, and take that information and use your own judgment after that. So starting with our objectives, what we're going to be doing is learning about the vital post-COVID clinical considerations. We'll be talking a little bit about aerosol reduction, actually a lot about aerosol reduction, and some isolation techniques, PPE considerations, and we're also going to dive a little bit into laser dentistry and how that's been helping in this post-COVID era. We'll also be learning best practices on how to re-enroll your patients into an essential comprehensive evaluation and documentation that all folds into one. We're hearing a lot of information from hygienists in particular about how are they going to go back to normal. So we'll be addressing some of those issues and what we need to consider as we're looking at our patients moving forward. And then lastly, what to consider when scheduling patients. How do we fit it all in? And I know some of the questions had arisen already on this meeting. So we'll be talking about how we can make some scheduling considerations as we enter the post-COVID era. So with that being said, you know, we have these aerosols that we're now looking at. It's, you know, it's a whole different era. It's not just what we're in contact with, it's what's airborne. So, you know, back when I first started dentistry, it was in the 80s. It's been over 30 years ago. And this is not unlike what we had practiced. We didn't have PPE, we didn't have gloves or masks, glasses, nothing to protect ourselves. So we took things lightly. And, you know, this was the good old days until we had some changes in the 90s where we had, you know, with certain viruses that had emerged, we had to keep ourselves protected, HIV, hepatitis B, hepatitis C. And then we now emerged to this point where this is no longer the norm. Now this has become the norm of facing what we're using as far as respirators are concerned, additional safety precautions, making sure that we're protected, not only from our patients, but we're protecting our patients as well as us being protected from our patients. So it's a two-way street. Dr. Gittner, what have you noticed that has been the biggest change? Because you've implemented all of this now into your practice. So what are some of your takeaways as you're evolving into this change clinically?
Some of my biggest changes honestly go back to what Linda was saying about communication, because as we put all that information or all that PPE on, we could lose our ability to smile, our ability to let patients read our face. We lose the physical touch. So we're having to learn some new communication skills to go along with all these new PPE regulations and suggestions.
Absolutely. And let's revisit where we came from. I mean, we were in surgical masks is all we needed. It was, we took things a little bit more on the light side, but we used what was protecting us. What we had was what was protecting us back then. And now we're resorting to N95 or KN95 respirators.
Right. We're having to step it up and find all new ways for that.
Absolutely. And we would tie our hair back, if that. I mean, it was kind of lax. I know when I was in hygiene school, we had to just put our ponytails up, and that was about it. We didn't have to wear any head coverings. And
now we've got bouffants, we've got head coverings, surgical caps, to the point that I was very excited to do my hair today because I've been just wearing, you know, ponytails and buns to put it all covered up. No bad hair days, but no good hair days either.
that's fine. Yeah, that's the one thing I have heard on the positive side, is that at least you don't have to worry about what your hair looks like going into it. So it's not have to make yourself too pretty, right?
Exactly.
It's saliva ejectors. So, you know, we use saliva ejectors on a regular basis, and we're getting a little fancy now.
Now we're going to hear recommendations for high volume evacuation for most of our procedures. Anything that's creating aerosols, it reduces the aerosols by about 90% in some cases. So to add that in gives an extra layer of protection to everybody in the room.
Yeah, and that's encouraging. We'll be talking a little bit more about that as well. And then isolation, you know, in the past, we used pretty much isolation being assistants would use a retraction with their mouth mirrors or with their fingers, or, you know, so we were pretty basic when it came to isolation techniques.
And now we're looking at things that have a bite block. They push the tongue back, they push the cheek back, and combine it with the high volume section so that we can actually have it all in one and get as much benefit as we can from that.
Yeah, and yeah, that's what's really important. You know, we're not just relying on what we're creating in the mouth. It's how we can keep it in the mouth and keep it from expelling and reaching everybody else outside of the practice or outside of the operatory. Dental dams, you know, we only used it for endo back in the day. I remember making the hole, putting around the you know, just using the whole process for putting on endo and using the frames, right?
Definitely. And now some of us are not as excited as others about using this, but we're going to have to really consider when can we use a rubber dam to cut down on the biofilm and everything that gets exposed into the aerosols.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I know that this has been such a huge challenge in our profession as hygienists. The procedures are changing. So many states, countries, provinces, they're in towns are eliminating the use of ultrasonics, at least right now in the interim guidelines. That also includes air polish, air water syringe. I mean, I always use the air and the water together. I never use them independently, right?
Exactly.
That's what we do with that.
Well, and now we're going to have to go back to the old-fashioned hand scaling. We're going to have to pull out some old techniques and polish up on some of the fine skills. And it's going to be a matter of a challenge with the biofilm. We're going to have to figure it out. And it may simply be that we kind of get the patients by and have to figure out solutions long-term as we go on.
Yeah, and this hits home because for me, you know, I've given presentations for many years on implant maintenance, and the go-to is ultrasonics, and they're also with air polishing, what we're using with glycine now. And so things are definitely taking a step back of what we need to do as we're looking forward. We're definitely dealing with some challenges in regard to biofilm management.
Yep. And like Linda said, we're going to have to communicate with our patients to help figure it out so that they still value what we're doing, even though they know it's not the same as what we were telling them was so awesome before.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we're keeping them informed. I think that's what's really important is, you know, making sure you're having that level of communication with your patients so they see what we are doing to follow the rules and regulations of our states and our governments, and also keeping everybody safe within our own practices.
Definitely.
So, you know, before we really didn't think about ventilation. I mean, it really wasn't, it was never really a topic within our offices.
Right. Now we have to look at airflow. We're having to talk to different people about the types of air filtration systems. I never used the word HEPA before now. Have to learn about the filtrations, learn about whether it's UV or not, all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot of considerations with that. Disposable consumables, I remember in the late 80s and early 90s when this was a big deal because we weren't used to the cost of what it took to be able to sanitize a room properly and be able to turn it over and make sure that everything had barriers on it. But they became affordable over the years, and we just kind of took things for granted as far as that they were something that was just part of an everyday day in the life of a practice. That's changed now.
Definitely. We're going to see the cost of it go up. We're going to see the need for more of it. We've got extra levels of it that are all going to be more expensive. The demand is up. And because of all that, there's an interest in some new techniques to the dental field, at least, of using some possible decontamination or sterilization in ways of UV or different things like that.
Yeah, I mean, there's some exciting things that are now evolving that we're able to see, and I'm actually pretty excited for what some of the future of at least being able to sanitize and sterilize is going to look like. And then we also, you know, in the past, very, very few practices actually routinely use mouth rinses as a pre-procedure rinse in practices. And I know that there's some question in regard to the studies and everything else as far as effectiveness is concerned, but I know this is something you've been doing for a long time just to be proactive, right, Doctor?
We have been. There's some older research about the effectiveness of this with other bacteria and viruses. So based on that, we're going to continue going forward. We're looking at what might be beneficial for different people for this. So possible change of what we're using, but we are going to continue. But everybody's going to have to decide for themselves until we get a clear view of what the science is going to be on this.
Oh, absolutely. And that just brings us as to, you know, what isolation techniques do we have available? I mean, there actually is more than I thought there would be. You know, it's not just the rubber dam, although we're revisiting that. That is what's going to be acceptable. But as far as additional isolation techniques, how have they been working for you, Doctor?
We have actually used a lot of these in our practice already. We like the type with the bite block and the retraction on the doctor side. My hygienists prefer more the type that goes along the cheeks so that they don't have anything in their way for accessing as they're working throughout the whole mouth.
Right.
But something to keep in mind, watch, especially the rubber dams, watch for latex, because we can't forget our old standards as well.
Right, absolutely. Makes the considerations what, I mean, and I don't think this is a one shape fits all either when it comes to our patients. It really is based on each individual needs, but at least we know that we have options that are available to us.
And that's going to be important moving forward.
Yeah, and boy, this is not, you know, what we're facing. Does that picture look familiar to you?
It certainly does. That's a view I see every day. So,
that's you, isn't that on the right?
yes.
So cute.
So, and that kind of shows, and that was early on, so somebody doesn't even have a jacket on. So things have adapted and been brought up to even further than that picture. But some things that we need to be looking at as we're looking at our practices. What can we use for face shields? And what we have found is the comfort, the weight, using our loops and our lights with them. There's all sorts of things to choose or to consider when you're choosing them. And then as you're getting used to them, the sounds, the acoustics, and even how they present to patients are something to really deal with ahead of time. I just said that we're going to choose to use our jackets, but there are gowns if they're available. There's disposable ones, there's cloth ones. We've got to figure out where we're going with those. Mm-hmm. But as we put on all these layers, the next concern becomes temperature. So we've got a blessing here that our office actually has zone controls so that we can keep the clinical areas a little bit cooler because it is so warm in all of these layers. The front office may not be quite as unaffected as they were in the past as they're starting to have to wear the masks and glasses at times too. So we may see a change up front, but we're definitely going to change in the back. Yeah. One of the other layers is having something on the top of us. The caps, the bouffants, the surgical caps. Here we were trying the disposables, but we have found that homemade ones that were more to fit and actually feel personalized to us or the practice have really actually been quite a benefit. We like the feel of them. They don't feel like they're moving around, and we feel that they secure our current face shields a little bit better. The next thing to look at is shoes. If you're still using the system of having shoes in, you definitely want to consider coverings. What we've done for a long, long time is we have a shoe allowance because the shoes stay in the office. It's very important to keep the bacteria and viruses all in the office and not take them home with our team. With that though, the next level is socks. As you're sitting down, do your socks show? So we've even started the discussion of, do you need to have socks left at the office as well? So what we've noticed though, and we were talking about it in another meeting today, it takes a long time to get used to all of these things, figuring out what's the best fit for each person, how to get into it. Can you do it by yourself? If there's new techniques for all of this, as well as dealing with the operatories. So you really should consider, as you're getting going, a day to actually just plan and either practice on your own or consider soft opening so that people can practice these new techniques with the patients, but with patients that you kind of choose so that you're not, you don't have your first patient back as a really demanding one that isn't going to like all these changes.
Yeah. Well, one thing I definitely appreciate from your practice is the investment that you take into making sure that your team is well trained. And to take, for you to be able to provide a full day of infection control training, it's really great because, as you know, there's different departments and everybody has different roles. And it does, there is a learning curve to learning what steps need to be taken to be efficient and effective and safe within the practice.
Yep.
Yeah, those are great considerations. And so, what can we do to minimize risk? And Doctor, I really applaud what you're doing as far as the pre-screening is concerned and how you're able to manage your patients. And I'd love for you to be able to share that with us.
Definitely. Some of it was already touched on by Linda because it starts with your admin team. It's a whole office procedure. The very first thing is actually screening them on the phone before you even make or confirm the appointments. Have them completing the paperwork online. We want to limit the time that they're in the office. We want to limit the paperwork. So if we can get this all online or at least on the computer, that will be beneficial. And then if you're signing with the electronic signature pad, consider doing some sort of barrier on that, as well as the option of doing a personalized pen from the office that the patient gets to keep. Advertising and safety.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah. So we ask that the patients call and report symptoms before or after the visits. We ask that they actually come in wearing their mask, but we have backup ones that we provide if they come in without one. We provide hand sanitizer, and in our office, because we can't get any more stations that are touch-free, we're actually having them get it from the admin team so that we don't have a touch point of everybody using the same squirt bottle in the patient lounge.
That's a good consideration. You want to eliminate a lot of the touch points that we take for granted, really.
Exactly. Then we actually screen this for the symptoms. We take a forehead temperature, and then we make sure that our team's protected too. This is where the admin will be wearing the masks and glasses, because if we are screening and somebody comes in, because we've had this happen, they walk in and they're coughing in their face. So if that's going to happen, we want the team prepared and safe as well. So the other thing that you can kind of look at is, where you're coming in with people. You've got parents that come in with children, you've got caretakers, translators. We allow one parent, guardian, whoever to come in if absolutely necessary. And then we try to prepare everybody ahead of time by discussing all of this on the phone so that there are no surprises as they come in. They know that we're going to suggest that they actually wait for them in a different spot so that we don't have them back in the operatory with the aerosols, and just different things like that, so that we can protect everybody, the patient, whoever comes with them and the team.
And I think that's really a good point, because if we prepare the parent in turn can then prepare the child, rather than coming in all at once and then learning, you know, as you go along as to what to expect. It's a whole lot easier to work with that at home, between the child when the parent is informed.
We're even trying to develop a video so that we can send it out ahead of time to patients so that they can kind of see what it's going to look like for the children, for the mentally handicapped, just to be able to prepare a little ahead.
I think that's a great idea. And that's also another way that you can be interactive with your website as well, as to let that information be known as well, as to what precautions you're doing and what for them to expect.
Yep.
Yeah.
And we use the same type of screening for everybody else who comes in the office. So we have, you know, reps, delivery services, lab pickup and drop off. Anybody who's coming in, we screen, we take the temperatures, we make sure that they're not bringing the virus in as much as we can help it. And then we actually have it as part of the protocol that the team members have to screen themselves at home first, as well as they screen themselves when they get to work and do a quick check-off list. And I know we got ours from the local health department, but the ADA has an example of one too.
Yeah, and you know, with everybody being pre-screened, it just makes that flow. How did you determine, you know, how did you develop your protocol? Because you've been doing this, I mean, you've been seeing patients really from the very beginning as far as emergency patients are concerned. But how did you get this, and how did you organize this?
We actually were very lucky to have our local health department send out some suggestions. The state dental association had sent out different things. So we actually have been evaluating all of those and putting them into our own electronic files or just into our systems so that we can be prepared and trying to stay up on top of things as they change. You know, originally, the screenings included mainly just the main symptoms. Now they're starting to expand what symptoms to ask about, things like that.
Right. And we have a question, and one of the questions is, if we have to worry about our socks, I mean, because you're trying to eliminate the amount of skin as we're being exposed to, why does no one worry about covering our neck?
I think that's part of why we're talking face shields, honestly, because we've talked about it at our office. Because there was a question, you know, the neck gaiters, my husband's a hunter, so we hear about those, but they make things, that would be a consideration, but we like the face shields, and so we were actually picking out longer ones to try to cover our necks, because I think that's a fantastic point. It is another touch point, and it's close to your face.
Right.
I even saw one consideration that said people should consider washing their face before they leave for home, or as soon as you get home to, you know, wash or take a full shower.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. What about the reception area?
That is already changing, and who knows if it's going to come back. We used to like to have it all comfortable and feel like you're walking into your house. Not anymore. We've removed a lot of our chairs so that we can have the social distancing. You want to look at what type of furniture you have. We like the cloth fancy ones, and those all had to be pulled. You want something that you can clean. We've got to look at the hand sanitizer. I already mentioned what we're doing because of not being able to get the touchless. Don't forget tissues and waste baskets. If anybody has allergies like we've got around here, you want to deal with that quick and easy and not have stuff all over that your team has to pick up or the next patient has to look at and wonder about.
Yeah, that's true.
And speaking of cleaning, get rid of anything that's hard to clean. Those magazines, toys, etc. Unfortunately, you know, you don't want patients waiting in there anyway, so we don't want things that are going to attract them. Our kids are very disappointed to lose all their toys, but, you know, we're keeping them safe.
Yeah,
Then the last thing you have to figure out is, how are you having people come in? Are you using the reception area? Are you using the cars and the texting or phone calls? It will take a lot of time, so make sure you talk to your team. Make sure you actually ask for input, because we were discussing it, and what I thought was going to work as a great system, my team came up with, you know, what about this? And we've got this going on that this one might not work. So look for input from your whole team, because they've been doing in and out a lot more than the doctors do.
Right. You know, and Linda and Kay had said earlier, you know, now the admin team is having to learn how to do like a basic triage as far as
Yep.
pre-screen is concerned, taking the temperature, recording any signs. So, I mean, it's really a big consideration. And again, this goes back to training, right? And creating
Definitely.
systems within your practice.
Sadly, just as we want to get going and seeing as many patients as possible, we have to make sure that they know what they're doing. Because even when you know and train, there's going to be questions.
Right.
Yep.
So I know that you created your system, and there are other systems that are available. The American Dental Association has a whole system. So
Yep.
make sure you visit if you don't already have a patient pre-screen form, that you need to get one or create one so that you can at least try to keep everyone safe and documented. Documentation is a very big deal too.
Yep.
Hey, Donna, does the ADA mention anything about the hair covers or the head covers in their toolkit? That was one of the questions that we had.
They say to consider them.
Okay.
Thank you.
So now we are in the middle of the procedure and things are a little bit different. I mean, I'm used to the doctors bouncing all over the place. You know, they have hygiene going, 3 chairs of hygiene going in 3 rooms, and then they're working on 2 or 3 columns of their own and 2 or 3 operatories of their own. So how has this now changed?
Well, you really need to try to minimize how much you're leaving, how much you're changing between the patients. When you go in there, first because of cost, second because of the aerosols and spreading the virus, you really need to consider what are some ways to stay in there. We're using our extra assistants so that once we're all geared up, if we need something, they can come in. They don't have to get a new N95. They can stay back far enough that they can just grab something and bring it back in so that we're not having to take everything back off and put all new back on. We're using different techniques like buffering agents in our anesthetics so that we don't have to wait as long. We numb them up, we talk for a minute or two to comfort the patient, and we can get going so that where we used to go do our hygiene checks, we can now stay and get done, because then you have to look at a different system for your evaluations.
Mm-hmm.
Then, once we get started, we go. We also like using the cassettes and tubs because things are more likely to be in there already for us, and we're not having to go search for what we need. We're wanting to implement as minimal invasiveness as possible because we don't want to have those aerosols. Even though we think we're putting in things that are going to keep us safe, why risk it? Let's keep it to a minimum. And we're also looking at what else can we do to protect the patient. So we're going to make sure that they're all wearing glasses, but there's other things that you could consider too if people want to go even further. And I already mentioned, we're going to have to figure out what we do about the evaluations. They used to go, you know, we could stop at different points and be able to go do them. Now we really should be getting everything done and then going to do the evaluations. Or sometimes this will be new for hygienists. Sometimes we give them a little head start and we go do the evaluation first and then we go see our patient.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that can also be, I mean, a lot of that can be predetermined by setting an effective schedule and huddling on it, right?
Yep. So talk about it in your morning meeting, as well as using the blocks. We actually block out where our long evaluations are going to be so that we know where the doctor's going to need to be in there, and we can time everything else around those things as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and
having the coaching in has been a big benefit for getting the blocks in and understanding how those work.
Yeah, and one of the questions is which one are you currently using?
Which one? What?
Anesthetic buffering agent.
Yep, I will answer that later when I remember.
Okay. Yeah, and those have really been very, very helpful because you can just start as soon as that anesthetic is in, you can start right away, not have to worry about the waiting period.
Yep. Yep.
As far as, and it's cassettes and tubs, I've been talking that for the last 10 years. I mean, just to create that efficiency, everything's lined up and organized. You don't have to shuffle around. You can clearly just easily and safely remove your instruments. Love
Yeah.
that. Yeah. As far as exiting, now that's changed as far as how do you dismiss your patients.
Definitely is changing. So we basically threw out our whole old system. We are taking off our first layer of protection, washing our hands. We have the patient wash their hands and put their mask back on, while the doctor is taking the route slip that has been safely in the cupboard, not in the operatory with the aerosols, and taking that up front. If we can, we even like to use our communication system and give the admin team a heads up that we're coming or what we need, or they need a referral, so that we can try to have them all ready to go and minimize the time that they're with the patient. In addition, we are actually trying to schedule right in the operatory so that we don't have the extra, if we're already geared up and protected in the back, we'll try to use that time in the back. We can use the doctors to escort the patients so that the team members can actually stay geared up. That way they can clean and not need another set of PPE, trying to cut down on expenses. Like we've talked, this is a business. We need to watch our finances. And then each office is going to have to figure out what you're doing about route slips. Are you getting rid of them? Are we putting them in the cupboards? Are you putting some sort of barrier over top of your charts because you still have paper? All of those need to be figured out before we get going. And then the last thing to be figured out is payment. Are you doing credit cards only? Are you sending bills? Are you, how much does that have to change?
Right. Yeah, a lot of that has to be in consideration. Kay, did you have any questions?
Learn how to unmute before I talk, right? I always do that wrong. I'm talking away and then I'm still muted. So I guess the anesthesia one, you're going to answer that one later. Someone said Septocaine. I don't know if that rings a bell.
That's an anesthetic that I do use, but that one isn't the buffering agent.
The onset maybe?
Yes.
Okay, and then the other one is, I don't know if you want to add, as far as your air filter, your HEPA air filter in your office, do you know like what you're using?
At this point, we have just switched to doing new filters for our actually furnaces so that they can actually filtrate. There's different levels of filtration, and so we went up to the top ones because honestly, the systems to add in extra systems where they've got the UV or other systems to actually kill the viruses, those are actually backlogged right now. So while we're waiting to get something stronger in, the first step was to at least have it in the furnace, so our current system is as efficient as possible at filtering things out, and we'll go from there. The other thing that I have heard is, will it help to open a window so that the aerosols can actually be dispersed? Different things like that to consider as more science comes out.
Okay, and then I guess they wanted to repeat, I'm not sure, Donna, if you said this or Dr. Gantner, but as far as the assistant cleaning the room, is she still wearing the same PPE from the patient that just left?
Yes, that was so that she stayed in that and we're not having to change, so that she keeps her mask on. She doesn't have to use a different mask, because we definitely want glasses and masks on when they're cleaning at this point.
So what you're saying is the doctor dismisses and the assistant stays in the room and does the cleaning, because you can't leave the room with the PPE. So she stays in the room and does the cleaning. Okay.
Correct.
Thank you. That's all for now, Donna.
Okay, thank you. Now we talked about during the procedure and the exit plan, but we also have been talking about aerosols, how we can be able to eliminate the aerosols. And one of the things that we see in regard to seeing patients is having the option of laser dentistry, and many of you already do have lasers that are in your practice, but in particular, working with offices that have laser, the perception from patients is that they feel as though there's no pain involved, it's going to be minimally invasive, and of course anybody that can avoid the needle or the scalpel or the drill, the handpiece, is in a good place, right? But laser is part of minimally invasive, drillless, shotless, non-surgical package. And so that's as far as the benefit to the patient is concerned. Now, when we look at the safety, though, of the patient, it all comes down to air management. And that, again, is another way that we can look at how we can reduce aerosols and splatter. There's somewhere between 67 and 83% where you're going to have less water and air. That's the reduction that you can experience from it, as well as killing viruses and enabling the savings of PPE and time savings, just allowing, you're not having to create as much of an aerosol, and you can bring people closer in that environment as well. So as far as the differences between handpieces and traditional handpieces and laser, we know that there's significantly less aerosols that are available. But as we look at time, because time now, we're making some considerations when it comes to the time, with the time that it takes to set up a room and break down a room. But we know that we can take, what is it, eight steps: calm, inject, wait, cut, retract tissue, the prepping, the coagulation, the restoration, and the reappoint for a patient. And it's anywhere between 25 to 40 minutes of a traditional handpiece. And then we look at a patient that is, if we're using laser, we can cut it down to 6 to 10 minutes and just 4 steps, cut that time in half. What are your thoughts, doctor, as far as the use of lasers and how that's been helping within the profession?
And really quickly, Donna, let me ask you a question. I know because you're also a technical trainer, so I know, like, I'm thinking of like the Soleo laser. That's one laser I'm thinking of. How long does it take for a doctor to learn to go from a drill to a laser? Like maybe after Gainer trains that. I mean, how much time training do they need? I know that you do a lot of technical training, Donna, and I'm sure Dr. Gainer, you've used the laser. What would you say time and training would be?
Dr. Gettner, do you want to answer that one?
I don't know how much training for an all tissue, because I have the soft tissue laser. But there is some learning curve. But honestly, if you get the concepts and you do the training, it flows right with your systems. There's a little bit of learning, but the learning curve for this was a lot less than a lot of other things that we've had to figure out through the years. So I think this one could come a lot sooner, depending on, of course, budgets and how we get rolling. But I think this is a great step if you can do it.
I can tell you from a state point of view, because I have conducted laser trainings, a hands-on portion of laser trainings in the state of Texas, for instance. It's about 12 hours of hands-on, 3 hours of hands-on, and the rest of it is on contact hours in person, to at least get the certification for laser training. And then, so as far as how long it takes, it depends on what the device is. So it could be relatively simple. An all tissue laser will probably take at least a couple of days to learn.
That makes sense.
Can you use, it says you can't use a laser for all dental procedures, but can you use it for most dental procedures? That's a good question.
You cannot use it for all the dental procedures. An all tissue laser is for hard tissue, soft tissue, mostly. Doctor, did you want to answer on that?
I even had a friend of mine use one to help with a crown prep. So it could be used for a lot of procedures.
Yeah, I know the Soleo laser is really popular for that, but I'm not sure, what all it can and can't do. So maybe that'd be something that we can find up and give them some information on later. So let me ask you this. What about the hygiene laser? So I know some states allow it, some don't. Donna, what's your thoughts on the hygiene laser?
I absolutely am such a proponent on hygiene, being able to use it for wound healing, as well as laser bacterial reduction and laser assisted periotherapy. There's so many different ways that, especially in COVID, it's a way that we can reduce the amount of contaminants and bacterial load that's present under the gum line into the sulcus. So I'm a huge advocate for that. As far as going back on an all tissue laser, it's more toward minimally invasive. So it's not necessarily there to do your entire crown prep or to do a class 3 composite or restoration, as it is to catch the patient when it's minimally invasive, so that They don't have to worry about using anesthetic. They don't have to worry about being numb on both sides of their tongue. And also, you're getting what you need to through carbon dioxide. So, that's just an alternative as far as, being able to reach patients from, just keeping that level of trust there for them. And so as far as the comprehensive oral evaluation, now I know that Dr. Gettner has, she has the most impressive comprehensive oral evaluation I've ever seen practice in a dental practice, as far as the way that she takes and manages her patients to understand all of the risk factors and ties it all in. She's been trained with Dawson Institute, and Doctor, you probably want to talk a little bit more about what you're currently doing as far as your comprehensive oral eval is concerned.
We like to refer to it as our head and neck physical for the patients, so that they get a little idea of how thorough it's going to be. We start with a patient interview so that we can kind of get what their goals are and understand where they've been, where they want to go. Then we do hard tissue, soft tissue, extraoral, intraoral. We look at the jaw, the bite, and we document everything. We look at the perio risks, we look at the caries risk. And part of it is so that we can get great patient care, a good baseline, and be able to do comprehensive work, not do just one thing at a time, but look at the patient as a whole and figure out what meets their needs and their goals the best. But on top of that, as we start looking at other ideas of, maybe medical billing or different things, it also gives us a good baseline for having all of those things already recorded for when we need them for the medical billing.
Yeah, and patients, when it comes to understanding the importance of their mouth and their oral health, I really think that, they don't care as much about their teeth as much as they care about their smile, and not just a smile, but a beautiful, healthy smile.
Yes.
And so that's where I think we as a profession sometimes think or assume that the patients value teeth, where the reality is, if you ask them about leading questions that go towards where their smile is, that's something that is a lot more in tune to what many of our patients' needs are. Moreover, sometimes thinking about just the teeth themselves.
Exactly.
And for us, it's important, as a hygienist, it's important to recognize perio disease. We know that it infects about 1/2 to 3/4 of the population. And we know that those statistics are out there. And we like to focus on, how we can help those patients. And we look at disease, we see disease. But what I think is that our patients, especially now, are going to be overwhelmed. And what if
Especially with that break of care.
Yeah, absolutely. So what if we were to see a patient that we look at their, instead of focusing on all of this disease, what if we looked at this? What if we had a picture of this in every single operatory so that we could focus on the health of what that patient looks like? Many times patients don't even know that they have an issue going on because they don't feel it. They don't feel the hurt. They don't feel.
And the other way to do it, images, especially of themselves, are priceless. So we will take photos, and you can even show a patient on themselves an area that's healthy versus the area that's either their awareness of a problem or your awareness of a problem. And then you can frame it as, I know you want to get this done, but we need all of these things addressed so that this can be done right, and work together with them, motivated by what they want done, but yet take care of them overall too.
Right, absolutely. So if we focus on health, and we also identify patient risk factors, this is extremely important. This is a list that has been comprised of all of the risk factors that impact us, not only from a medical perspective, but they also have ties with the inflammatory spike or the risk factors that include oral health. And so, I love it when we talk about the oral systemic link, but really, why is it just the oral systemic link? We don't talk about the gastro systemic link. We talk about the whole body. So rather than removing our head, we need to focus on the entire patient and all of the risk factors. If we see any of these that are present, then this should be a conversation that we should have with our doctors, let our doctors know As a hygienist, let the doctors know that there are these inflammatory risk factors when they have those conversations before the patient is seen for their check, but also identify with the patient and find out a lot more of that story. Doctor, what is there anything you wanted to add as far as this inflammatory risk factors? What do we not even know yet about COVID-19 and beyond?
Exactly. We don't know because we're hearing from nurses and doctors sometimes that COVID wasn't just affecting the lungs, it's affecting brain or heart or different things. We don't know what all is going to come out of that. So to get a baseline or to be able to understand how these all connect, a lot of times we see the patients more than the physicians, and we can either get them help to, we point out what we're seeing and get them help for their overall health, or be able to tie it back in from what they experienced if they were one that had this disease, so that we have a baseline and can kind of track in the future of what may develop.
Right. And not only do we have these systemic risk factors, but according to the American Academy of Periodontology, we have these additional periodontal risk factors. So this is right from the AAP, and these are also areas. So if we see any of these that are present, or any of the systemic risk factors that are present, I would definitely make sure, number one, that is documented, but number two, these are important factors we're going to be talking about in a little bit in regard to documentation, and then also how we can be able to help our patients maximize not only their insurance benefits for dental, but now we're moving into submitting claims for medical as well. So what is it that we need to let that information go to where it needs to go so that patient can receive benefits and you can also get paid as well. So these are very important to just put everything all into consideration as far as what is that comprehensive overall health for that patient looking like.
Yep.
As far as ALARA, that also includes when do we take x-rays? Some of us don't know when that prescription actually is to take x-rays, and this has been around for a very long time. This was actually 2012, nothing has changed so far in regard to as low as reasonably achievable. But as far as, make sure you do look this up. This is from the American Dental Association and the FDA, and it's the actual recommendations as to when to take radiographs from your patients. And currently, doctor, you base yours based on risk factors and when the patient presents with when they're due for x-rays. Do you also then tie that in with your comprehensive oral evaluation anytime that you see that patient, based on risk factors, x-rays, all of that, and medical history? Can you share with us what you currently do to determine when that patient needs to have a comprehensive oral eval?
Definitely. The first step is all new patients automatically get a comprehensive evaluation. We need to know where we're starting. They need to know where they want to go. Then anytime they have a big medical change, anytime they have a big aesthetic drive that they want to change, or every 5 years if they haven't had it for another reason, we like to know what has changed. A lot of times these things will creep in on you and you'll not get the big picture until you pull it all together. So this is kind of a list that we started with years ago when we were starting our comprehensive evaluations, so that we could kind of have a guide of where we were and make sure that we had a checklist. What are we doing? And you can use these even for creating templates within your dental software so that the team doesn't have to remember all these things. They can lead through. In fact, right now, we actually have our assistants that they will lead the hygienist through these different points, and they all know what's coming next, but they'll say it out loud so that the patients hear it and then get to record whether it's normal or some sort of area that's not as healthy so that we can address it later with the patient.
Right. Yeah, and this is just an example of what kind of a list you could use, but I think what this really does show is it creates a systematic way of just making sure you've covered all the bases and everybody's all on the same page. So whether it's you or your assistants or your hygienist, everybody is following the same format as to what to expect. And most importantly, your patients see that confidence that everybody has when you're all on the same page. And here are some additional considerations. I know that Doctor, you talked about it, this being really like you go for a medical physical, this is an oral health physical, right? As part of the comprehensive oral evaluation. It's a way to combine oral health with total health and express the importance. Not only, I mean, that patient needs to understand that during these unprecedented times, that this is a chance for them to be able to have their entire health evaluated, that will connect the dots between the oral and the rest of the body, the oral health and the rest of the body. And as you said before, doctor, is creating a new baseline. Document any deviation from health, and we talked about that as well. To complete a medical history review, and anytime a new health history is acquired, I would definitely make sure that that patient is, you know, that should be a conversation as to, hey, while you're filling this out, let's go ahead and schedule you to have a comprehensive oral evaluation so we can make sure that we check your entire your health and your overall well-being. And you know, doctor, feel free to chime in with that as well.
Well, we said a lot of times they'll have a major medical condition, some sort of stroke or heart attack, and it's nice to go back then and do a comprehensive evaluation, especially for some people who had not been willing to do it at the 5-year point. This is a good time to get them back into alignment with what we feel is very important for overall health.
Yeah.
And then we have already been talking, we're looking at inflammatory, systemic risk factors, all of these different things. We include the perio charting, the hard tissue charting, and photos are critical these days for getting reimbursement and explaining to patients what's there.
Absolutely. And, you know, I know you take a really good, you have a whole series of photos that you take in a layout so that you can identify as you're going through the exam. Those are also listed in order on your layouts for your photos as well.
Yeah. And then
as far as determining the priority of the patient, you know, again, if you are able to do a comprehensive oral eval, it's not just a way that you're going to be treating their perio needs, because traditionally that's what we would focus on before the rest of the body, is we would take care of their perio needs. But there may be additional areas of concern that we have to focus on, and that's up to the doctor then to determine what kind of phase and what kind of priority that will take.
Yeah.
And then again, follow the ALARA principles and prescribing full series of x-rays. And if that patient needs x-rays or whatever that reason is, you know, that can go in tandem with a comprehensive oral evaluation. And this helps our hygienists so much, not having to see patients that are prophy after prophy or perio after perio. If we put those patients in the schedule of the hygienist, if hygienists are reviewing their charts ahead of time and determine where those risk factors are, or if that patient will be a candidate to start over and have a comprehensive oral evaluation, have a new baseline, at least we're not having to don our entire N95 types of PPE. We can at least, you know, tone it down because we're not working in an aerosol environment with those patients.
And I just want to say, we've talked about coaching. One of the biggest benefits that I felt with the coaching is getting somebody in, not just to explain what we were just introducing here, but to actually work with my team, especially the first times. And we still have people in periodically to remind them, how do you do all of this without feeling overwhelmed? How do you step into it? Where do you start? That was crucial for us to be able to start with this so many years ago.
And I'm glad you said that, because I'm looking at a screen full of words, but when you actually have a coach that can work you through the steps, and so that everybody's all on the same page together, it just makes it so much easier.
Yep.
For everybody to be on board. As far as documentation is concerned, so we know there are some changes that are happening, and we know that medical and dental are both merging, and someday I think medical will actually find its way to just take care of the entire body instead of just the head for dental, and then the body, the rest of the body for medical. But this is as of April 30th, this is actually Mass Health. They're specifically outlining, and here it is right here, and I'll blow up what's important, is that they're requiring medical necessity narratives. The date of service, a perio evaluation, this is for a patient that needs to have scaling and replanning. And a complete perio charting, appropriate diagnostic, quality radiographs, history of previous periodontal treatment, and statement concerning the member's periodontal condition. Now, whether it's Medicare, Medicaid, or whether it is insurance, what we have to be aware of is that if there's a requirement anywhere of necessity um, uh, of the medical necessity, then we know that we need to follow those orders, and everything else might be following a line. So this is one way, again, this is just to recap of what to look for as far as inflammatory risk factors, what to look for in regard to perio risk factors. I'm sure many of you have seen the new staging and grading, but just one thing I wanted to bring from the AAP is now we're looking at grade modifiers and risk factors. So risk factors are important as far as number one, our documentation, how we see our patients more comprehensively, and it's very important that we're documenting what the risk factors are as well. So if we have those in play, it makes it so much easier. To give you some information as to what the best way to, there's many different ways that you can provide your own notes. And I always find that templates work really, really well. I know, Doctor, you've set a ton of templates within your practice management system, so you don't have to you can fill in the blanks rather than having to start over and create everything from draft, right?
Definitely. And that helps with team members that don't know how you want it worded in there. It helps with remembering all the different sections. It helps even with the flow, for your evaluations to put them into SOAP with an emphasis on the P now, and be able to have it for medical billing, to have it for your legal necessities, and to have it for future patient care.
So we've been getting a lot of questions as to how do you write SOAP notes, and so we thought we would share some information about how you can go about doing it. And SOAP stands for Subjective, Objective, Assessment, and Plan. We threw an extra P in there because now the requirement is to document PPE documentation. So as far as the subjective, those are going to be your chief concerns, what the patient reports in their own words. So everything will have quotes around what the patient has actually said. And the objective are the facts, what the patient presents or demonstrates with. This would be all of your collection of data, not necessarily the interpretation, but the collection of data. And your assessment is the interpretation of the data that's collected and your diagnosis. And your plan is going to be the recommendations for treatment. And then, like we said earlier, the PPE is all going to be documented. And we'll give you an example of what we came up with a patient that has these particular types of issues. Oops, it's advancing before I even want to go back. Come on. But here's some examples that can be, just used to use as a reference as to what a SOAP note would look like to cover all of those areas.
And
anything else that you wanted to add with that, Doctor?
No, just, I know a lot of people are familiar with SOAP. We've talked about it. We talked about it in school. It's been around for decades. But to go back to it, even if you don't put subjective objectives in your, but to have those categories for organization and be able to find it. And then especially to kind of have an idea of what to put in for the PPE documentation.
Yeah, most definitely. And then now we're talking about how do we get it all done? What are some of these considerations that we have to take into play?
Yeah, the first to remember is it's going to take time. Give your team time to learn it and assume that it's going to take a little bit of time to learn it, to get used to it. And it's not going to always be this way, whether it's because they get more used to the flow or things change again and we get to get rid of a little bit of this stuff. We'll see. But make sure you have enough time planned into the day to get in and out of the rooms, prep the rooms, get all the donning and doffing done so that it's all taken care of. Have a system. We've even decided we've got enough operatories that we can put them in one room and give a little bit of leeway that a hygienist could go seat the next patient and have switched over and have the assistant be back up to clean the other room so that we have a backup plan because we know it's going to take longer. One of the critical things has already been mentioned, block scheduling. We've used it for years. It helps plan and control the flow of the day. But now when you don't want to be leaving the operatory, you really have to pay attention to what's going on where so that you can get all the places you need to be without having to waste all the PPE that's so critical to get. I'd already mentioned, even consider blocking for the emergencies. Be proactive. We're going to be looking at it every morning and saying, okay, this is where to put it in. Or even when we do our chart prep a day or two ahead of time, looking so that we say, this is the best time. If it's true emergency, yes, bring them in. But otherwise, control when they come in, because honestly, it takes longer now than it used to.
Yeah, definitely.
So we need to consider limiting the patient visits, do quadrant dentistry, same day crowns, things so that they don't have to keep coming back. PPE considerations, as well as, you know, the room flip over, all of that counts up. We talked about trying to save a little on the finances, and this is one way that we can do it. The other thing that we have to look at is the speed that we can take the days. I know Linda and Kay had already mentioned it. We can't do the double booking. We can't do the craziness because of flipping rooms, staying with one patient, all of that. So take a little time, plan it out with your team. What needs to change? What can stay the same?
Yeah, and go ahead.
I was just going to say, look at what we can do to pull in things that aren't always the aerosols for both sides of the treatment, both the hygiene and the doctors. There are some times where it's nice to have a break from that. It's hard to breathe in the N95. So if they can have a time where they're doing evaluations, or if we're doing, you know, an occlusal splinter, where it's not quite as stringent, we're not making the aerosols right there. Sometimes it's nice to have that blocked out and give them a break.
Right.
So,
yeah. And again, it gives, you know, hygiene a chance to review patient charts and schedule comprehensive evaluations in their schedules. Also, I like when the hygienist is able to take control of their own schedule. So when they schedule their next patient's appointment, they determine how much time is needed for that patient. And, you know, you were talking earlier about quadrant dentistry, trying to keep doctor in the same room when they're working on quadrant dentistry. Laser definitely allows you to even go cross quadrant so that you don't have to worry about the anesthetic part of it.
exactly. And then as we get going into this, we have to remember, we've had 3 months of pushing off our patients for things that they had already accepted that they are critical to get taken care of. So as we do this, we need to kind of look at who we're scheduling. One, the priority of their treatment, but also who makes their appointments. We have a way of kind of paying attention and tracking the patients that are consistently no-showing or coming late, because they're going to throw everything off right now. They might not be the ones that you want to schedule back here as we're getting going. We may want to focus on the ones that you know are committed to being here and getting the things done.
Yeah, absolutely. And reviewing insurance plans, you know, considering the additional cost of PPE and turnover. I know that the ADA has made a statement trying to allow the insurance companies to know, hey, listen, we need some help in regarding, you know, to the additional cost of PPE. So they created a code, and reviewing your insurance plan, determining on how you'll be negotiating, or even if that plan is working for you in your particular practice altogether, right?
Exactly. And now's a good time to consider jumping into medical. There have been some great webinars and workshops. Benco's been very good about supporting, and I know other people are providing free webinars as well. Use this time that we've got left to make sure that we can actually do the best for ourselves, our patients, and our team.
Yeah. And also for additional information too, we found that the Return to Work Interim Guidance Toolkit from the ADA has been very helpful, and we provided some email addresses for them as well, and they're changing their guidances. It seems to be every week we are getting some updates on it. ADHA also has an interim guidance on returning to work for hygienists as well. But we know what you do is important, and you're building smiles, and you're building, and I know that there is a lot of frustration that we're dealing with, and challenges that we're overcoming, but we're all in it together. And there's been no more important time to be able to take care of the public health at large, and as far as their oral health and their overall health is concerned, than it is right now. We want to thank you all for what you do. And Dr. Gettner, do you have anything that you wanted to add?
No, I want to thank you. Thank you guys for spending your afternoon with us. I know there's a lot of questions to be had here and the answers keep changing, but if we work at this together, we'll come up with some great answers for the whole profession and keeping our patients and our team safe.
And because of the popularity of all of the questions that we do have as well, we're going to be offering a future clinical workshop that will take a deeper dive into getting back to the new normal. So please reach out to practicecoaching@benco.com and express your interest here, and we will be in contact with you. But thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. You did an amazing job. So a lot of great information. And just to let you know, the questions that we had that were asked, we will get them answered. Everyone will get a copy of those questions too. I know there's quite a few of them out there. And they also ask for a couple of the shots of your SOP, Dr. Gettner. So I'm sure that that's something we can arrange. And again, if you want a consultation with Donna, by the phone, we're definitely going to offer that for you too. So please just let us know. We definitely want to make sure we're here to support you and answer all your questions. Please make sure that you save the date. We have some upcoming webinars. All you have to do is take your phone and scan this QR code, and it will give you all of the upcoming webinars that's going to be happening. We have another one tonight at 7 that I'd love to see you guys on. Again, this is the upcoming webinars, so please make sure you scan it. This will be the one tonight with Dr. Levin. He's going to be on at 7 o'clock, I think. Is that right? Yeah, 7 o'clock Eastern time tonight. It's going to be fantastic. It's also going to be hosted by myself and Chuck Cohen, so this will be a good one to come on this afternoon. And then we have, that one thing that everyone wants to know is when you get a bad review, what do I do? This is another free webinar that we're going to be doing with Dr. Tao, so please come on this one. He's going to really be answering those questions. And then our workshops, we're keeping our workshop costs at a very minimal fee, but we definitely want to make sure that we are giving the speakers too who've been off work, who are sharing all their information with us, some really good time with you. So we're limiting the number of the people that we have in the workshops, but everyone, Uchi is amazing. He's going to be doing a workshop. If you're interested in improving your health and getting back into shape, make sure you sign up for this workshop. It's going to be amazing. And again, Manal's going to be talking about how you market your practice, especially right now. Like Linda said earlier, a lot of practices during this time should have been absolutely doing marketing. So Manal's going to really teach that person in your office how to market your practice successfully and all the little gadgets to use. So please make sure you tune in for that workshop. And then Catherine Itel. If you have not heard Catherine Itel Bell at any of the dental meetings, you should have. She's going to be doing a workshop. So if you want some one-on-one time with Catherine, you have to sign up for these workshops. She's going to be helping you with those phone skills. She's going to be also helping you with some samples of telephones questions that may be asked to you and how to respond to them. So here are the upcoming webinars. You can scan that. Again, I want to make sure that we say thank you for everyone that came on today. All the speakers, Linda, Dr. Gettner, you're phenomenal. Thank you so much. And
Thank you so much for having me, Kay.
Oh, Linda, you did an amazing job. So thank all of you. We really appreciate it. Again, please make sure you come on to these webinars. All these webinars are free. The workshops are very minimal, but you'll get a lot out of them because we're limiting the number of people that are signed up for them. I think there's one more slide, Donna.
And that is the last one.
That's okay. So if you have any questions, definitely reach out to us at practicecoaching@benco.com. Again, that's practicecoaching@benco.com. We want your feedback, so let us know how we're doing and let us know if there's anything that you particularly want to know about. We're more than happy to get that scheduled for you. All right. Thank you very much. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate your time today.
Thanks, Kay. Bye. Bye, everybody.